This section deals with the management of vocational training programs. Welcome to a virtual tour of the Herbert Art Gallery Museum. I'm Richard and I manage Herbert Media. We deliver vocational training to young people, some of who have learning disabilities. Today I'm going to show you around and tell you about some of the issues I have to be aware of when managing our training programs. Unusually for a museum, the Herbert is also an accredited vocational learning centre, registered with a number of bodies who award national qualifications. This expertise has led to partnership working with training providers and cultural practitioners across Europe, and the Herbert is now one of the leading museums in the UK for delivering vocational training. This is one of our trainers, Simon, with a group of young people in the gallery. Today, they are developing their communication, group working and planning skills through making a film. We find the gallery a good environment to training. It's like a creative playground and very different to the classroom. Like all of our trainers, Simon has undertaken teacher training and is currently completing his certificate in teaching in the lifelong learning sector. Our staff undertake other training too, to learn more about things which have an impact on their role, such as training to learn more about special educational needs and training in how to deal with safeguarding issues. We will talk more about safeguarding later. As a manager, I believe that staff training is really important for my team. Not only does it develop their skills and prepare them for dealing with new situations, but it also builds up their self-confidence. Question 1. If you were to start working with people with a disability, what types of training do you think that your staff would need? Managing the training environment is important, and we try to create one which students feel is their own, which doesn't necessarily look like a traditional classroom, and to some extent mirrors a working environment. Somewhere where they can display their work on the wall and feel safe. Creating a positive learning environment is essential for success in the classroom. Teachers should create a welcoming atmosphere where students feel safe and willing to share. Structuring the physical environment of a classroom will influence the way the students feel in the space. For example, strategically placing desks in a boardroom style gives the impression of the workplace, but also enables students to sit around the table to talk, exchange ideas, and share their learning. We use this room for planning, writing, and making things by hand, and use the space next door for working on the computer. Our trainers find it easier to take students away from the distraction of the computers when planning and working in a group. As a manager, it is important to support our staff in creating the learning environment which works best for their learners. In my case, this often means identifying and obtaining funding to make changes to the learning environment or to purchase equipment and other resources needed for training. If you are working with people with a disability, you will have to take this into account when creating your training environment. For example, for students who are wheelchair users, make sure desks in the classroom are organised in a way that will accommodate them. Always assess the spaces and galleries that you will be using to ensure that there are clear paths. When working with people with a learning disability, you will have to consider other issues such as noise and light levels. Question 2. How easy do you think it would be to adapt your organisation for working with people with a disability? This is our trainer Kerry, who also acts as our designated safeguarding officer. Here in the UK, everyone who works with children or vulnerable adults has a responsibility to ensure that procedures for safeguarding them are followed. And the definition of vulnerable adults includes people who are open to abuse because of learning difficulties, physical disabilities, and mental illness. This obligation for safeguarding includes risk assessing educational trips, responding to bullying incidents, ensuring that the internet is being used safely, and reporting concerns if we believe that people we work with may be victims of physical, emotional, or sexual abuse or neglect. It also means that as employers, when recruiting, we have a responsibility to assess if an applicant is suitable to work with children or vulnerable adults by running a criminal records check. In the UK, this is now done by the Disclosure and Barring Service, who perform DBS checks which form a vital part of our recruitment process, enabling employers to assess if an applicant is suitable for a particular role. If an applicant wishes to work with children or vulnerable adults, then the only way an employer can check if they are barred from working with either of these groups is by carrying out one of these checks. Question 3. Are you required to run criminal record checks on staff who work with children or vulnerable adults in your organisation? Question 4. Who would be the most appropriate person in your organisation to be responsible for safeguarding? Welcome to our recording studio. We reckon we must be one of only a few museums in the world that has its own recording studio, and as well as recording music, we use it for producing radio adverts for our exhibitions, voiceovers for our films, and audio guides for our galleries. The trainer here is Daz, teaching a student how to use the mixing desk. As a requirement of one of our training commissions from local government, we must sometimes have our trainers observed by an external assessor to evaluate the quality of their teaching. In response to this, we have also set up our own internal system of teaching observations, where I or my staff occasionally sit in and evaluate each other. I think it's a good idea to keep in touch with what the team are doing in the classroom and in the galleries, and it is good for me as a manager to observe and take ownership of our training provision. The types of things I will be evaluating include the trainer's subject knowledge and expertise, how well they monitor the students' progress in lessons, and the extent of their students' learning and progress over time. The framework I follow is based upon one used by Ofsted, who regulate the provision of education in schools and colleges in the UK. Question 5. What would you look for in a good training session? You've probably already noticed that as a training provider in the UK, we have lots of policies and procedures to follow, some of which may be different to ones which museums are accustomed to following. Often, we are required to follow these as a condition of being commissioned by local government to deliver training. The types of things we have to consider, in addition to our obligations as a museum, include health and safety in relation to training in the galleries and our training spaces, and in working with people with special educational needs. For example, risk assessing our spaces, workshops and trips. Others include an e-safety policy in respect to safe use of the internet, guidance for educational visits and behaviour, attendance and anti-bullying policies. You may think that you do not need to have to go into this level of detail in your organisation, but it is still important to know what steps to follow if certain things happen and to communicate this procedure to your staff. Written policies and procedures are a good way to do this, and as the manager, the buck might stop with you if something goes wrong. If you do have to produce new policies and procedures, don't be afraid. Many of the ones we follow are proven, established ones which have been adapted from somewhere else and from other organisations. Go online to see what resources are available, or ask other organisations, such as your local college, if they can let you see their policies so you can adapt them for your own purposes. Question 6. Which policies does your organisation currently have are relevant to delivering vocational training? This is Robert. In addition to being one of our trainers, Robert is our internal verifier. As internal verifier, his role is to monitor the way our teachers assess the work of their students when they are working towards accredited qualifications to ensure accuracy and consistency of activities and decisions. Accredited qualifications are those that are reviewed, recognised and monitored by the regulatory bodies in order to make sure that they meet specific criteria and quality standards, and the Herbert is approved to deliver a number of them. The most obvious advantage of accredited over non-accredited qualifications is that the accredited ones provide a guarantee of quality of both the qualification programme and the awarding body that offers them. Non-accredited qualifications, on the other hand, are not regulated, and there is no guarantee that they meet appropriate standards. There is no way to tell whether non-accredited qualifications are fit for their purpose, if they include relevant content, or if the appropriate methodology for assessment is used. I believe that by delivering nationally recognised qualifications, we are able to attract more commissions for our training services and more funding for our work. Question 7. Which qualifications exist in your country will be suitable for your organisation to deliver to students. This is the end of our short tour. Perhaps you have picked up some ideas that can be applied in your organisation. Question 8. What has been the most useful thing you have learned from your short tour of the Herbert Art Gallery Museum's training services?